Hari Om. Welcome to my channel. Another English class. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are safe and sound in your houses. We'll be continuing with the story Footprints Without Feet. In my previous video, I had already told you about Griffin, the scientist who had, prepared a medicine by using which he could be invisible. And we had already discussed about H.G. Wells' phenomenal, art of creating science fiction. In this story, we've already seen Griffin's greed, Griffin's irritation, Griffin's frustration. And now in this part, we are yet to see, how Griffin would be, petrified, and the reward which he'll be getting, the reward for showing animosity to the human beings. Because ultimately in this world, there is something called the law of karma. Manu, in his Manusmriti, had said, Yadhenu sahasaveshu vatso vindanti mataram tatha purva karta karma kartamanyu gacchati. That means, just as a calf follows its mother, similarly our actions from the previous birth, they follow us. But one more thing, let me tell you, it's not always the actions of the previous birth that we relate to. Our actions have an equal and opposite reaction. According to, I leave it to you. You know that better. It's Newton's theory. Every action has got an equal and opposite reaction. And Griffin, being a scientist who did not value education, who did not value his knowledge, who always thought of doing bad to the society, even the medicine which he devised, which he invented, he just did it for his own benefit, his own selfishness, his greed, everything were on the forefront, We've already seen how Griffin had managed to burn the lodgings the house of his house owner. Now imagine a person who gave you place to stay, and what did you do? You burnt his house. Why? To take revenge. Griffin definitely was a vindictive man, a man who definitely was knowledgeable, but then he never gave importance to knowledge whatsoever. Secondly, I want to tell you here, Griffin was a very frustrated person. He was selfish, he was greedy, and let me tell you something. There is something called divine justice, which I had talked about in my first video, the first part of this particular story. I had told you that divine justice is bound to happen. And you have already seen in the story how Griffin had to roam without clothes. At last, what happened to Griffin? He managed to steal clothes. He reached the theatre hub, the place, that was the hub, the Drury Lane. He reached Drury Lane, and Drury Lane was the hub of theatre. We've already seen that. And what did he do? He entered into a shop, he stole bandages, clothes, sunglasses, false moustache, everything. And in that process, again, he attacked the shopkeeper, from behind. So all this is his karma. All this are his actions. Now, it's very important for him to receive the reward or punishment, whatever you say, for the actions that he has already committed. Let's continue. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out with a little later wearing bandages round his forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers, and a large hat. To escape without being seen, he callously, very carelessly, in a very casual manner, he attacked the shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. My dear children, my dear students, my viewers, let me tell you, definitely money is important to lead a life in this particular world. But is money everything? These are a couple of questions, which the lesson again offers to us, offers to the readers. How far can you travel with the money that you actually stole from somewhere? I don't think you can travel far off. Griffin, after having stolen that money, eager to get away from crowded London, he took a train to the village of Iping, where he booked 2 rooms at the local inn. He entered into a local hotel and there he booked, 2 rooms. The arrival of a stranger at an inn in winter was in any case an unusual event. Of course, Iping decided to escape, to elude. And what else could have been better for him? To camouflage himself in the village. He did not want to be seen by people. He did not want to be noticed. He wanted to go to a place where nobody would be recognizing him. And that is the reason why he chose that village, Iping. But then, I had told you in my previous lecture also, during the winter season, London is like very chilly, very chilly, very cold. Now, it's very obvious that the people were very curious. They wanted to know, why did a visitor choose this time of the year to travel, and that too stay at a local inn? And a stranger of such uncommon appearance set all tongues wagging. People started talking about, Griffin. Mrs. Hall, the landlord's wife, made every effort to be friendly, but Griffin had no desire to talk. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, my boys and girls, my dear students, Griffin's character is a very important, feature from the examination point of view also, let me tell you. You may be asked a question, describe Griffin as a human being, describe Griffin's character. Griffin basically symbolized negativity. Griffin symbolized evil, and he was a nice contrast between education and evil. I had told in my previous lecture also, education makes us humble, it makes us modest. Look what Griffin did. He was already filled with so much of frustration, he was filled with so much of animosity, hatred, coldness, bitterness for everybody. Now Mrs. Hall, she was an aged lady. She was an aged lady who wanted to be friends with Griffin. But somehow Griffin's nature stopped him from being friends, because his past, Griffin's past was, haunting him. He had committed crime. And to save from that crime, to save from his past, he chose the village of Iping. And that is the reason why I tell you. Again, you cannot evade, you cannot elude from your actions. You may be able to cheat the entire world, but can you cheat yourself? That's the greatest question. And that is exactly what we get to see here in this particular story. Mrs. Hall wanted to be friends with him, but Griffin had no desire to talk and told her, my reason for coming to Iping is a desire for solitude. I want solitude. I want tranquility. I want peace. I do not wish to be disturbed in my work. Besides, an accident has affected my face. When you actually do wrong to people, when you actually have that negativity in your conscience, it is then when you take the support of lies, it is then when you keep telling lies. Griffin wanted to be alone. What better reason could he have given to Mrs. Hall? The reason was very simple. He said that he had chosen Iping for his work purpose. He wanted to be alone. He did not want people to disturb him. And that is the reason he did not want to talk to anybody. He did not want to, make friends with anybody. So, and what justification would he give for his face? Therefore, he said that an accident had destroyed his face. So, satisfied that her guest was an eccentric scientist, and in view of the fact that he had paid her in advance, Mrs. Hall was prepared to excuse his strange habits and irritable temper. So ultimately Mrs. Hall was a very normal lady. She was a very common lady. She saw that Griffin had actually paid advance. So why to disturb Griffin? And she was quite satisfied with the fact that probably a mad scientist, an eccentric scientist, chose her house to, for research purposes. And that is, that was enough for Mrs. Hall to be quiet. But the stolen money, and this is where my theory of karma that I was telling you, that has started intervening in the story. The stolen money did not last long. And presently, Griffin had to admit that he had no more ready cash. How long can you lie? How long, for how many days can you keep telling lies, lies after lies? Your past will never leave you. Your actions will never leave you. So he was expecting, however, he said, a check to arrive at any moment. Shortly afterwards, a curious episode occurred. Very early in the morning, a clergyman, a priest in the church, and his wife were awakened by noises in the study room. Creeping downstairs, when they went downstairs, hurriedly, when they were in a hurry, they were like going downstairs. When they went downstairs, they heard the chink of money being taken from the clergyman's, desk. Griffin knew that he would not be able to sustain himself for a long time in a strange village. What did he do? See, Iping was a very quiet place with very less people. Obviously, wherever you have less people, wherever you have less population rather, you can't hide. And people who keep committing wrong, who keep committing evil deeds, they think themselves to be very clever. Griffin could have been a hero in the story, let me tell you. And the other day also I was telling the same thing. Had Griffin used this theory of being invisible for philanthropic purposes, for doing good to the humanity, he could have been a hero. But that did not happen. Griffin was blinded, he was blindfolded by greed, selfishness, avarice, greed for money, avarice. And that is the reason he never felt the prick of his conscience. He never felt the prick of conscience. This is exactly what has happened. It was Griffin basically who had gone again to the house of the clergyman to steal money, to rob money. Without making any noise and with a poker stick, billiard stick, grabbed firmly, in his hand, the clergyman flung the door open. Surrender! Then, to his amazement, he realized that the room appeared to be empty. You know, the people who are clever, rather oversmart, overconfident, they always think the others to be foolish. I mean, it's not wrong to think yourself to be clever, but don't underestimate the others. Griffin made this mistake. That was his flaw. That was his folly. Griffin knew that he was invisible. He thought probably he could escape, he could get away by doing anything and could go inconspicuous, you know. He would not be noticed at all. But then, even the clergyman, when he opened the door and, he flung open the door and he said, "Surrender." He had a poker stick in his hand. He was amazed to find that there was nobody in the room. And why did I tell this? That clever people always think themselves to be cleverer than the others, because Griffin does not even know that his own cleverness, his own overconfidence will bring him down. So the room appeared to be empty. He and his wife looked under the desk and behind the curtains and even up the chimney. These are simple lines, There wasn't a sign of anybody. Yet the desk had been opened and the housekeeping money was missing. The drawer had been opened. The chest had been opened and the money was missing. Extraordinary affair, the clergyman kept saying for the rest of the day. But it was not an extraordinary affair as the behavior of Mrs. Hall's furniture a little later that morning. So, Griffin remained in that invisible manner. He remained being invisible, and finally, what did he do? He entered into his own room, that is Mrs. Hall's house, and the furniture also started behaving in an extraordinary manner. So the landlord and his wife were up very early. They were surprised to see the scientist's door wide open. See, in movies, in cinema, in films, you must have watched, crime of any type. The criminal always thinks to have committed a foolproof crime. But believe me, there is nothing called perfect crime. Griffin also thought that he could easily get away by behaving in this fanciful manner. But that was not so. His door was open and Mrs. Hall, along with her husband, they were awake. They had woken up early and they found the scientist's door was wide open. Now where did he go? How is it possible for a man to move out physically? So usually it was shut and locked, and he was furious if anyone entered his room. The opportunity seemed too good to be missed. As it is, Griffin was a very mysterious character according to these people. He was very fishy as a character. So they peeped round the door, saw nobody, and decided to investigate. Now it is in the human nature, curiosity, inquisition. These things are very much there in the human nature. When these people saw Griffin's strange attitude, they decided to find out Griffin's whereabouts or probably his belongings. So the bedclothes were cold. Now these cold bedclothes suggest that the door had been opened for the whole night. And that is the reason. It's during winter, so obviously air came in and the temperature of the room also went down, showing that the scientist must have been up for some time, and the stranger still, the clothes and bandages that he always wore were lying about the room. All of a sudden, Mrs. Hall heard a sniff. breathing. Dogs snip. You must have seen that. It's short breathing, when they try to smell something. Close to her ear. A moment later, the hat on the bedpost leapt up and dashed itself into her face. Suddenly, from nowhere, the hat, dashed into the face of the lady. Then the bedroom chair became alive all of a sudden as she and her husband turned away in terror. They were, they were afraid. They were very scared. Anybody would be if you see things moving in front of you and you don't even know the reason why such a thing is happening. The first thing is like bhoot, ghost, and that is probably what even they thought. So here, as she and her husband turned away in terror, the extraordinary chair pushed them both out of the room and then appeared to slam the door and lock the door after them. Mrs. Hall almost fell down the stairs in hysterics. She was convinced that the room was haunted by spirits and the stranger had somehow caused these things to enter into her furniture. Mrs. Hall was a common lady. But again, I have two questions to ask you here. See, do you really think the attitude of Griffin towards these old people or towards anybody so far, has his attitude been justified? If your answer is no, it has become very convenient on your part to understand Griffin's character. See, in order to fulfill his own desire, in order to fulfill his own greed, his avaricious nature, he kept on committing mistakes after mistakes without even realizing that his own mistakes would definitely lead him into trouble someday, and that is exactly what happened here. So the what do you say? The suspicion fell on him because he behaved in a very strange manner. Lesson to be taken from this area again. See, if you are a modest individual, if you know how to talk to people properly, if you know how to appreciate people properly, people appreciate you back. But if you show off, if you are too arrogant, if you are like always trying to do wrong to others, there is God who is watching you. And one day you pay the price for whatever you do in life. And now the story is taking a turn. Now Griffin has to pay the price of whatever he has been doing so far. So my poor mother used to sit in that chair, she moaned. How would she know, poor lady, what made the chair move in the air? She thought probably a ghost had entered, a spirit had entered. To think it should rise up against me now. Oh my God, I can't even imagine the chair charging at me, Obviously, it was her mother's chair. The feeling among the neighbors was that the trouble was caused by witchcraft. But witchcraft or not, when the news of burglary at the clergyman's home became known, the strange scientist was strongly suspected of having had a hand in it. Suspicion grew even stronger when he suddenly produced some ready cash. At this point of time, I will reiterate, I'll repeat what I had said about the criminals and crime. Criminals always feel they are safe and they have committed a foolproof crime. There is something called perfect crime, my dear viewers. Griffin had thought that by being invisible, he could enter into anybody's house, steal money, rob the house and produce ready cash. Hello, where are you? Realize you thought yourself to be very clever. Fine. But in that process, you thought the others to be foolish. That was your fault, Griffin. That was your fault. And now that he produced ready cash all of a sudden from nowhere. He produced. Because until some days back, he was telling that he does not have money. And suddenly when he received some cash, people were doubtful of him. I want to know, what have you been doing to my chair upstairs? She demanded. And I want to know how it is that you came out of an empty room and how you entered a locked room. How did you enter into a locked room and how did you come out of a room that was closed? All of a sudden, how did you manage? Now, at this point of time, the scientist was always very quick-tempered. As I had told you, he was a very short-tempered person. Now he became furious. You don't understand who or what I am. Ahankar, vanity. Ahankar has always destroyed people. A very important lesson at this point of time, keeping the text aside, let me talk about. See, there is no harm to be knowledgeable. There is no harm to be innovative. But the moment you become ahankari, you become vain, you become haughty, it is then when you invite your downfall, your doom. Griffin wanted to show off that he could bring so much of destruction to the people there. But Griffin forgot something, that already he had, dug the pit for himself. In the process of being overconfident, in the process of being oversmart, he had already drawn the suspicion of people on him. And then what did he do? I'll show you. This was his ego that was speaking. Suddenly he threw off the bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and even nose. It took him only a minute to do this. The horrified people in the bar found themselves staring at a headless man. Mr. Jaffers, the constable, now arrived and was quite surprised to find that he had to arrest a man without a head. But Jaffers was not easily prevented from doing his duty. If a magistrate's warrant ordered a person's arrest, then that person had to be arrested, with or without his head. Jaffers, the constable, came and suddenly, oh God, oh my God, what am I finding? A person I have to arrest has got no head, headless. Jaffers was like, see, this area is very beautiful. I mean, on one hand there is this Griffin, who despite being a scientist, commits a very foolish job here, a very foolish task, foolish action. Griffin continuously kept on doing all nonsensical things. And as he did it, he made humanity his enemy. Look at the situation. He has to be without clothes now. And for how long do you think will Griffin be able to survive in that cold, in that manner? Jaffers, the constable, was shocked because he saw a man without a head. But he had to arrest. The person, So there followed a remarkable scene as the policeman tried to get hold of a man who was becoming more and more invisible. I told you, slowly and slowly his bandages were off, his hat was off, his clothes started, getting off. Finally, a shirt flew into the air and the constable found himself struggling with someone as he could not see at all. Some people tried to help him but found themselves hit. Griffin beat everybody. Whoever was coming to catch Griffin because he was invisible. Fine. The title is very symbolic. It's very significant. Yes, the invisible man. Footprints without feet. Absolutely justified. But then, what is the moral? Does the moral tell us to be proud and vain of our own achievements? I don't think so. Some people tried to get him, but then they were hit by blows that seemed to come from nowhere. In the end, Jaffers was knocked unconscious as he made a last attempt to hold on to the unseen scientist. There were nervous, excited cries of "Hold him, hold him, hold him!" But this was easier said than done. Nobody could catch Griffin. Griffin ultimately escaped. Fine, he escaped. Griffin had shaken himself free and no one knew where to lay hands on him. The final line of the story. Griffin had finally managed to escape. But my question to you intelligent people out there, did he win? I don't think so. Even you don't think so. Griffin was not a winner here. Griffin was a loser. Now what all did he lose? Let me tell you. First, he lost the value of his own knowledge. Second, he lost the trust of people. Third, he lost his own self, his identity. Because after this, whatever happened, the fiasco that was created, the hullabaloo that was created in Iping, Griffin was a stamped criminal now. Griffin was a stamped criminal. Never will, he be able to confess or prove his invention to people. This is one thing. Never will he be able to wear clothes, probably, because his nature has made him very rustic, frustrated, full of anger. So obviously his karma, and that is the reason why I talked about karma. His karma made him stand on this platform. So with that, I come to the end of the lecture. Please watch the video till the end, and I request you to give your feedback on the explanation. Hopefully you liked it, but still I want, because your feedback is very important for me, and please subscribe to the channel for more videos. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe, be happy. Thank you so much.